Bueno, buenas noches a todas y todos y muchas gracias para quienes.
Thank you so much for the ones who are here, and especially to have this opportunity, a more informal occasion, as part of a very intense agenda. And we're going to share uh, the work that Gina Vargas, as Lucho Yáñez has announced, the work that Gina Vargas has been doing these 50 years of feminism, which consolidated, and she brought all the documents and life compiled in this book, 50 Years of Feminism in Latin America and the Caribbean, Reflections after 30 years of Beijing Declaration. So we wanted also to mention this because this is history of feminism, history of a feminist, which is iconic feminist for all of us in the region, and many more for many more the ones who are here, but the ones who were in Beijing, the ones who were not there, how are we thinking this new shared vision? So I would like first to ask Maria Noel Baeza to provide us with a brief introduction, and then we are going to continue with the agenda. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I would like to thank Gina. Gina, you are a reference for all of us. It's a pleasure to have you here and to be with you in this such an important evening in terms of recovering the history of feminism, which is so important, and to receive that from an activist up until today. That's something very important as well. And this is a wonderful story from what Lucy said yesterday from the mechanic upstairs, which didn't allow the delegates to come in. Something very funny, typical of Lucy, up until the way you spoke without words, but just with banners. And we can walk with you as the protagonist of a self-reflection of what has happened and what do we need to do. A person deeply involved, which has combined a personal and collective experience, because you have created a number of organizations throughout your life. And this is helpful to understand where we're coming from, and we can stop here and to rethink about our future. Although no country could implement the Beijing flat platform entirely, we are going to see in the book that we have ratified the importance of feminist fora with the civil society, to learn from them and to permanently improve the public policies that we all need. It is essential that these experience also provide us answer to the new context. Today we have so much uncertainty that to have a historical view is very useful to have like constant action with this wonderful work. For young women, it's a pleasure to contribute with this learning and to value the trajectory of our women leaders. So this is what we would like to do now. And as Cecilia said, we're going to listen from you all, and hopefully we can have a final paper version and not just the QR input. Thank you so much, Gina, for being here, for being a wonderful feminist women leader.
Tenés el micrófono, vinimos acá a escucharte a vos.
Gina, we would like to listen from you now. Thank you so much, Maria Noel. You're always giving me such nice, moving feedback. Thank you so much. What we're going to listen today is the result of UN Women and is an insistence of Anna Falou. And no, she wants to introduce you. Would you let her to introduce you? She wants to introduce you because this is going to be more in line with the 50 years of feminism that the 25 years I've been with her. Well, I was included in the agenda, but not in this moment, but later. But I like this informality because with informality, we have built a Latin American feminism and the Caribbean feminism as well that has been extraordinary, that we have taken huge leaps to change the conditions and circumstances of women in the region. And well, uh, my beloved Gina, well, she's very thin now. She was fat in the past. And all the known faces, Norma, Vicky, I don't want to mention you all because I'm going to leave someone out. So I would like to say that, well, we were together in Beijing process, but not only that, we were together also in UNIFEM. We were colleagues there, and we built that feminist agenda, which was, I mean, the beginning of UNIFEM. Thank you, Maria Noel Baeza. Thank you, Ana Westmes. Thank you, Cecilia Lemani. You are also doers, women leaders. And I would say that this is the right occasion, is the right opportunity for you and women to call upon Gina Vargas for this so necessary reflection and recovery of the processes that we have gone through up until today. The processes that we started from the civil society and from 1995, but even before that, because we started quite before 1995 articulating all these regional processes. And I would like to say that Hina was proposed as coordinator of the Forum for Latin America and the Caribbean upon suggestion of feminists, especially Chilean feminists. Chilean feminists, they knew about this woman, this Chilean woman, that was the group close to dictator Pinochet. She has been appointed as the representative of women of our region for the NGOs processes, and this great Chilean woman they very quickly started to call us, and we started building a regional articulation where we installed Gina Vargas as our coordinator. This is, and I'm saying that this has a political value, and I would like to rescue that political value of that time. That was a very promising beginning. And it was a promising beginning, very powerful beginning, because no anyone was representing us, but we chosen a feminist with a trajectory, with great commitment, with a way of thinking, reflection, etc. And she was Gina. And I would like to tell you also that, as Mariana Noel said, well, this is a right time. It's a timely moment. I congratulate that we are taking Gina's thinking in different moments from 1995 till today, and that reflection, as Cecilia Alemany said, this also involved personal aspects, the decisions that we make at personal level, and how Gina has built her own feminism and trajectory, political trajectory within this feminist world. We have politicized what is, when we have recovered this history from our own practice and experience. And as Gina said, this Beijing process was very complex, was difficult, was tremendously difficult. I remember Vicky Guzman just sat down next to me, helping me with my speech. Yes, to each of us, Natasha Molina also, and Natasha Molina, Rosalba Todaro, Aide Virgil, she's not here anymore. And they were so important also during this process, as many other wonderful women which have accompanied us, and we all set up a regional force that was coming bottom up. And as we said that moment, I don't know who said this, but I think that everyone said this. This was the pretext to write our own text. Cecilia Olea said that. The text and pretext, I think that gave us the opportunity to do this. And well, what to do in Beijing was important, not who was going to Beijing. In the process of what we wanted to reach to this global platform. And women began to know about this, and we didn't know anything about the United Nations in that time, and we reached the Mar del Plata conference without the faintest idea. I mean, I almost died there if it weren't for the Uruguayan friends, Albespina, Rosario Aguirre, who came, and one night they gave me a pill and they say, you are going to fall asleep. And they put it on my bed, and because we were with no resources at all, and so they wanted to take us out of the room, but we were there, and I want to render a tribute to that, to Maria Renda, the beautiful Caribbean woman, because the memory is built from that one. And Beijing took me to, and Anna said, how much, they told me, how much money do you need, Anna? And she signed a check with which we could pay for the translation, for the rooms, and then we had our friends from UNIFEM, Branca Moreira, Ana Maria Brasileiro, Mónica Muñoz, Guadalupe Espinosa. We have to name them all. And they all came to me and said, don't worry, Anna, UNIFEM will take charge of this. UNIFEM will sustain and will support with any necessary thing.
So this was a collective construction, but without wanting to overstep my time, I would like to say that accompanying Gina in this process, for which I was co-coordinator because the conference was held in Argentina, meant a lot of force, a lot of emotion, a lot of affection. We were able to build affection, respect, and love that has been long-lasting over time with Gina and with all the beautiful women, the national coordinators, the sub-regional coordinators with whom we had arguments and discussed, but together all of them we were able to draft that text. And Gina was the most generous coordinator that we could ever have had. Her honesty and her intellectual generosity, her talent, involved a tremendous commitment. But at the same time, she was very funny. We have laughed enormously. I have the funniest of anecdotes, and some are of a very high tone, and I cannot share them in public. Many stories come to mind, and that was what our process was like. Dear friends that supported us. Norma Sanchis was permanently there, always saying, "What is it that you need?" Everyone, each one of them. I don't want to name them because I would necessarily leave people out who are very loved and very valuable in that process. And I would like to say that this book that is still at a which is still a draft version, is a historical book, but it was a necessary book. And what is most important, I think, is for all of us to read it with love, with a good spirit, and that we think, what else could we contribute to this in other entities? As Lucy Garrido said in a marvelous article that I read once again, and that makes me laugh once again, we didn't even know where Beijing was. When we were told Beijing, we all looked at each other and asked, well, where is that? Where is Beijing? For us, it was Peking at that time for Latin American and Caribbean women. We were talking about Peking. We didn't know where Beijing was, and that is how we ventured into this marvelous wave, which is the wave of feminist resistance in our region, and conservatives will simply not be able to hold us back.
Muchas gracias, Ana Falú.
Thank you, Ana Falú, and I become very emotional with your love and with all the beautiful things that you say. I don't have my throat is suffering, but I hope you can hear me okay. Now, I want to refer to 3 moments to talk to you about the process itself until we reached Beijing, and even after that, and conclude with what we have today as lessons and as obstacles after 30 years, and end up by sharing with you what Beijing meant to me at a personal level, because it was indeed very meaningful. What I would like to recover is this process that also leads me to remember one of the most enriching, complex, and dear moments in my life. Anna has already said that, but we were not invited to Beijing, but rather we were there as a result of the strength that we had in order to make this change within the UN. What Anna has not said is that in 3 or 4 days, at a moment where there was no email, WhatsApp, and so on, the Chileans drafted a letter, they sent it, and then everyone resent that, and we received some 300 or 400 faxes of people saying, no, we had to change that person and put Gina in her place. And I thought that we definitely had to wage that struggle, but that we weren't going to win. And yet we won. And then we said, well, what are we going to do now? Now we're going to travel to Beijing. I think that was a feminist victory that shaped the whole process deployed before and after Beijing. I always say that we, first of all, arrived as a result of our struggles and not as experts, because we didn't know too much what entailed for us in the future. We had taken part in other conferences, not in the meeting in Mexico, but we did take part in Copenhagen and in the Nairobi meetings, but that wasn't related to the official conference in any sense of the word. And this is something that you can read in the book, because I would like to say that in 1980 in Copenhagen, Mitila Chungar was there, who didn't really like us very much at that time. But then there was a military coup in Bolivia, and all Latin Americans were very committed and protesting. And the police, 2-meter high police, arrived, and it was terrible. One of our sisters had a broken arm. We were all beaten up, and of course, the Prime Minister apologized during that evening. But that was the style of many of those conferences. But finally, we reached Beijing in this fashion, in a more autonomous fashion. And so I was saying that we arrived there as a movement in struggle. And the first experience, as mentioned by Ana, was in 1994 during the regional ECLAC conference held in Mar del Plata. After that, we held the pre-COP and so on, but in the forum of the conference in Mar del Plata, someone said Mar del Plata was the moment when we unveiled our ignorance, and then very quickly learned how to position ourselves and how to make progress. So Mar del Plata was a space for action and for total learning. We lacked sufficient experience, except Aide Beijing and a few more that had more experience, and she defended us in the hotel, and they wanted to evict us from our hotel rooms. And so the few of us that had hotel rooms, our rooms became a room where 4 or 5 of our sisters slept together, because there was no other solution. We also lacked experience in being advocates and how to adequately relate with politicians. So Mar del Plata was memorable, because we very quickly learned that we were in a different playing field with a different logic, and only by knowing that we could position ourselves as a movement. It was a crucial moment, because there we also began to organize ourselves at a national, sub-regional, and regional level. We have worked with 5 sub-regions in Latin America, Central America, and Mexico, the Andean region, the Southern Cone, the Caribbean, and Brazil. And together we represented many voices and many initiatives. One first aspect was diversity in action, and there I learned that conflict enables us to grow. Conflict is fundamental in order to make headway in something that is not sufficiently clear. And so the first stress was the issue of diversity in action. And this was, there was no longer a need to populate feminisms with a perspective and with major voices, but rather this was a reality that was already making itself heard. The voices were present there and demanded acknowledgement and their own spaces. And I'm talking about Mar del Plata. Initially, there was strong criticism towards the coordinator because of the scarce echo that she had in terms of the racial aspect, in terms of the emancipation promoted by feminism. Despite the fact that in the regional team that was comprised of extraordinary black women such as Sergia Garvane. Sergia wrote an article saying, look, we are here, but we have no voice. We are not being heard. And she, Feliz Carneiro, said, we have to make feminism blacker. And so this was indeed a vacuum that we had to urgently deal with. And this also promoted its regional and global expansion, both in the Beirut Forum and during the conference itself as well. And this continued throughout the conference. The way in which indigenous women's movements, indigenous feminists, Afro, Latin, Caribbean feminists have taken on board and have contributed to feminist agendas is something truly very impressive in this 30-year process. The other historical stress of feminism was in order to maintain a balance between the dynamics, interests, and the autonomy of women's and feminist movements vis-à-vis special official spaces for both the governments and the UN systems that we were not truly very knowledgeable of. And therefore, Mar del Plata not only involved a collective learning. For me, as responsible for that process, the uncertainties accompanied me for a long period of time. I felt that I had not contributed what was necessary, and once a conference ended, I simply wanted it to disappear. After 15 days of profound depression, I decided to overcome that, following the suggestion of my colleague and subsequent husband of mine, who knew all my friends. And I wrote a self-critical letter to the whole team that acknowledged personal, political, and collective limitations, and suggesting that we should redirect the process. The human and political quality of the team, Anna was fundamental, but it was not only her, became evident. And at that moment of crisis, that was fundamental because it enabled me to recover the confidence that we were going to be able to do this at a collective level. But moving from the national to the global sphere was fundamental. We were already organized. We had sub-regions. We were holding meetings in each one of the regions or in each one of the countries in order to continue to discuss and to prepare ourselves. And then we had the pre-conference in March 95, and that was our first articulated experience as a regional movement, and it was a global interstate space, not only involving our own region, as occurred in Mar del Plata. And it was the second and last meeting preparing for Beijing, held in 1995 in New York. Before that, we had readjusted we recalculated our experiences and skills, and we found we were facing a very complex reality in our country, in our region. Many of the governments were conservative, a significant delegation of governments who were weak and lacked expertise. A few governments joined civil society and rather began to incorporate people linked to the church and to that type of sectors. But pre-con evidently provided, meant that we came of age, convinced that only with clear political strategies among us, with global governments and more democratic governments, we would be able to make progress, and also with the conviction that we were not going to be surprised by that anti-democratic fundamentalist dynamic that did not wish to enter into a dialogue, and that was deployed by patriarchal and conservative forces whenever they feel we're making progress. I forgot to mention that the region was quite conservative, but what I remember most, and it's not that this was our intention, Aida González, the delegate from Mexico at that time, the political party, was in government, so it was not a great love of us. She didn't really love us, but she upheld marvelous positions in the defense of the rights of women. She looked down on us, but she said very wonderful things.
So an anecdote that I think is something great to share with you in this way of articulating the differences and to find common grounds. Again, with indigenous women, was myself and Blanca Chancoso from Ecuador. We were discussing the following strategies for the dialogues between feminists, indigenous people, and we were reaching some agreement. And suddenly, we have this old guy who came there with some papers, and he was speaking loudly, and Blanca said, "What is he saying?" And I heard, and I said, "I don't know. He is against abortion." And she stood up. She stood up, Blanca Chancoso, and she went over him and she said, "Listen to me. You, no milk, no baby, you are a fool." And she threw all the papers out, and this guy, as she was with the skirts, and I mean with all her feminist culture, and he was absolutely paralyzed there. And she also tells this story. I have written this many times, but you know that this dialogue that wasn't the main topic, but had this repercussion in terms of the different approach of our sisters. And in that sense, I think that Beijing, more than a conference, was the expression of the capabilities of women, the possibility to express and negotiate their experience, knowledge, desires, and part of their utopias. And I wrote this thinking of what I have seen with Blanca Chancoso, but it's valid for the entire process, I guess. So, as Anna said, was a political presence which gave us experience of participation with this impressive seal of feminism to come to the process with more than 2 decades of being struggling and feminist connections throughout the region was a great achievement favored by the different feminists meeting in Latin America and the Caribbean, that I think that all of you know that very well. So in Latin America, we have had a group of feminists by that time against the participation in Beijing with very strong criticism, but that was part of the diversities that we had, diverse opinions, and then we have also some problems, but I don't know if I said this or not, but after the experience in Mar del Plata, which has shown us a complex reality full of uncertainties, we started from the region a process of multiple strategies aimed at different levels and spaces to reach Beijing, and with I mean, clear dynamics. We had 2 moments in Beijing, as in any conference. First, the forum of the civil society, where we were there, the feminists in Asia, Africa, Latin America, etc., and the conference itself. In the forum, the Chinese government, authoritarian government, sent us 60 kilometers away from the official conference. But many of the most of the ministers went to visit us. I remember this Ministry of Women here in Chile. What's the name? The great woman, Josefina Bilbao. Josefina Bilbao.
No, ya no estaba.
No,
La Ruth Cardoso también.
Ruth Cardoso also, and many others. And so this forum were 5 days, where each of us were working in different working groups. The indigenous, we didn't have the reality of the trans in this process yet. And this was a tent, but we had Frida Kahlo there with the sun like this, and there was this wood with this good figure of Frida Kahlo, and we thought that that was the best business card to legitimate us in the conference. And the feminist movement could deploy everything that has been learned before and to take the most of it. And what happens in Beijing? Well, participating in Beijing was aiming at to expand these logics also with little experience as movement in that time, because that not only implied interaction with governments, but with some global agencies, a global system that was not flexible, were excluding us, and the dictatorship had been over in different countries of the region. However, that was a global movement sustaining, and that there was no democratic hegemonized, but a Western world with no much room for diversity of approaches, and the one single language, because not to know about English was to live marginalized. So we had to learn all what this means, because a model and a space that was not only criticized by feminist women from different angles, but all the other social democratic movements proposing different alternatives. And participating in Beijing, we wanted to strengthen the globalization and democratization space, and at the regional and global level. So Beijing process wasn't only participation of feminists there, but rather a process of disputes in terms of contents, scopes, orientations expressed on the one hand by negotiations with governments in terms of national and global actions, and on the other hand, our presence and both were the space where we moved at different levels, from the local to global level, in permanent movement. They started lighting all the different areas. Two important aspects are a testimony of this. But what I want to say is that, well, the stirs that where we have that was mentioned before, that we have this justice mechanism and resources, and we were half away going around the mechanic stirs up until the Chinese police came and took us out. And the other thing has been told also, that Lucy said that was the second day, because there were 2 days for the civil society had the opportunity to speak. And after the first day, well, let's say, yes, because my organization is doing this and that, and was something very biased, I would say, and very bored. And Lucy Garrido, that she's so special, she said, "Che, what happens if we keep silent? If we don't say anything at all?" And that night, Anna Falou with other sister, they started painting. We have bought an enormous band there, at kind of a tent, and what we wrote there, the sentence, and I came here and I said, okay, after all these days, we still don't know what's going to happen, and in these conditions, it's better to keep silent than to speak. And I kept silent, and then after 1.5 minutes, I was counting 1, 2, 3, but then after 1 minute and a half, I came with this cattle and of this size, and it was wonderful, wonderful. And they start clubbing around, and I said, wow, and the applause was incredible. This is what, this is how, this is how, I don't know, an Italian singer, this is how he should feel after each concert because of this big applause. And well,
años de esta enorme experiencia,
years after this great experience, feminist women were very important, proposing all what has been agreed in Beijing, but finally that wasn't accomplished in each country. However, we have kept established strategy, and we are fighting with the governments for the compliance of this platform from an approach that is based on dialogue and autonomy over these 28 years. But this is the end of Beijing, but then we have Beijing +5, +10, +15, and with each of them with its own story behind, and what we were presenting as feminists, where the governments were presenting, what we were negotiating with feminist friends from other regions. I mean, the support that we had in that time, that was the support from UNIFEM, and we continue making progress. But in Beijing +5, and in each of them, some story, but Beijing +5, for the first time, we were forbidden to speech. I mean, we have to hand our speech out for it to be translated. And we didn't know what was going on. We asked our friends, Sonia was working at ICLAC, and Sonia, please ask, and nobody knew what was going on. And then we discovered that the secretary that was highly conservative, and she decided not to translate and not to hand the speech over. And so some people say, no, we cannot let this happen. And other ones said, no, we're going to lose the opportunity. We better print the document, and we distribute the document around. And well, that she was so annoyed. She was one of the ones who have drafted this document. And I didn't know what to do up until finally at the entry door, just about to enter the room to speak in the main conference, Anna Falou came with 2 whiskeys. And I drank the 2 whiskeys in one shot, and I went there and I spoke. But I can tell you the end of this story, because that was very powerful. And we asked the government, how are you going to approach this platform, with what word? Because the words of feminists in Latin America are justice, democracy. And so your words shouldn't take a step back in history. Well, basically, this is what I want to say that after 30 years, we have come to realize that well, the Beijing Conference for Women has been the most robust instrument to advance in the global positioning of women, together with their demands and democratic expectations. And this demanded the government or set up a roadmap to different governments to implement policies for the women's rights. You know that it wasn't an easy task.
But what was very impressive was to feel the strength of the feminist movement in Latin America and the Caribbean, and this conflicting in nature vis-a-vis the new things that came up. It was a tremendous learning process. What we need to do now, of course, is to see. Well, I am not going to start talking about the political and economic situation of Latin America at present, because we could break down into tears, really. And I have already said that in my previous um, intervention. But I would simply like to conclude by saying that I believe that there is a fundamental aspect in those 30 years, and that is that those years forced us to review what we had taken for granted, things that were valuable, but obviously that was not the total response, and therefore that capacity to search was something that provided us with a tremendous driving force and different elements. So this was a profoundly political and ethical lesson that we learned that has enriched our perspective with the wide-ranging meaning of justice and democracy that we offered, and that is also offered by new voices. And therefore, I would also like to highlight the present and very strong presence of young feminist women that bring with them new sensitivities and new ways, new reflections and knowledge. And thus it is urgent for us to enter into intergenerational dialogues because women have a basic flaw that we conquered during that stage. And of course, the agenda is not over. The agenda moves ahead. I would like to conclude with something at a more personal level, and I've already referred to this. During the Beijing process, I learned more than ever in my life, and I learned every day and in very different ways and in different spaces by being connected to a powerful feminist, regional feminist movement, and at the same time building a global feminist movement has been something fascinating, and it has been one of the most enriching lessons for me, and I believe for all of us.
No, nunca. Bueno, aprendí
I
que la...
learned that interaction with governments is important if and when the autonomy of the movement and its transformational agendas are not displaced. I learned how difficult it is to incorporate diversity and differences, especially when there are so many inequalities among us. And this is a learning process that will be never ending because that slow discovery of the other, permanently overcoming our internal defenses and seeking democratic expansion as from feminisms. And I believe that this makes us better persons. I learned from women about friendship and solidarity. I have very few negative experiences in this process, except in the feminist meeting in 1996, where all types of horrible things were said to us at that time. But that is over. And despite the fact that there are obviously differences, there is a much more fluid relationship now that doesn't have the horrible characteristics it had at that time. So we learned as a result of that. So this is very, very interesting. It has been full of solidarity. It has received the backup of the movement committed in this venture at a very difficult moment in space, and I have learned to work not in one but in several teams at once. Something that is not easy, but well, we were able to do that. And the one that is most significant was the regional team comprised of the diversity of feminists that accompanied the process by sub-regions, by networks, and by agencies, especially UNIFEM, which is today UN Women, and by ECLAC, that was already involved with these processes, and also with the life experiences and the experiences of struggle of these women. It was a wonderful group that was diverse, powerful, with multiple dialogues, with shared and effective leadership. It was the discovery of the strength of our diversity, unity at a global level in order to promote the interests of women. I also learned about the enormous difficulties at that time in order to work with our differences within the feminist movement as expressed in one of the feminist meetings that I mentioned. I also began to learn how power works and how leadership works, so within and outside the movement, within and outside of myself. I learned from my mistakes. I learned to accept my insecurities as part of that permanent process of discovery and of learning. I learned also from my own strength. And finally, as I mentioned in one of my latest articles, I learned that tolerance and dialogue facing the conflicts that come up is the most precious virtue in order to establish democratic relationships, and that is sometimes the most difficult virtue. And again, I would like to repeat that this was a collective, creative solidarity and critical and self-critical process, and also very powerful in its results that left us at that time and in the Latin American and Caribbean horizon for now and for the future. Thank you very much.
Nos tenemos que parar.
Well, I think we all have to stand up and give her a warm hand.
Y todos quieren venir a darle beso a Gina, pero
Everyone wants to kiss Gina, but this is not over yet, because on the table, well, first of all, many people have already been named and were present at Beijing, but many in the room also want to share their reflections with us. But Anna Westminster, since we've changed the order, you were left for the end, and not only because of your present role at ECLAC, and Flora Tristan, I think.
Bueno, Gina, yo me tomo la palabra.
I would like to dare speak because I have been a colleague of Gina, whom I love very much. She has been a great leader, very democratic, very horizontal. And so I want to express that acknowledgement to a very dear friend. And I think you forgot to mention something. I believe that ECLAC and the women's unit and the women's division played a very relevant role during 1 or 2 decades, generating work with networks, with governments, with the production of knowledge, supporting the conference. And Sonia, when she moved from Mar del Plata to Santiago, she played a very important role. So I would simply like to remind you all of a very important actress that accompanied us. I was involved in this process, and therefore I would like to share this memory. Miriam Kraus and subsequently Sonia, who moved from the unit to the division. So I believe that that is very beautiful. But what I would like to highlight here is the tremendous leadership of Gina, the enormous love that we all have for her, and the fact that she truly deserves this warm hand and much more. In addition, she was very audacious to dive into this pool, so to speak, when no one else dared to do so. And Anna, I want to apologize to you because Aranzaid has to leave. So I would like for you to be even more flexible and offer the floor to Aranzaid straight away. And then we go back to you.
If you were in my village, we would even just start the way we do to congratulate you, to say thank you, to affirm you. Thank you so much. I was in Beijing. And let me write myself a little bit into your book. 93, I was part of the young lawyers working for Vienna conference. And we were working as the Women in Law and Development in Africa with CLADEM, with the Asia Pacific. Oh, it was powerful. And we saw the spirit of ECLAC in the feminist women's human rights agenda. And it was the women from these regions who said women's rights are human rights. And it was written in the Vienna Declaration, though, of course, Hillary Clinton said it later. But I just wanted the record to be clear that it was the women's movement. In Beijing, it was my first exposure of being international. So the African women in our big outfits, we always saw the Latina and the Caribbean women as coming with the intellectual passion, political, and the women from the Pacific always had the flower. And feminist global movement is what you were part of co-creating. Congratulations. Congratulations for that. And you know, years later, coming into UNIFEM, Anna Falou, Monica, Teresa, Roberta Clark, the amazing team that was now implementing Gina. We started to lift that which you delivered in Beijing to give it steps and feet. And then I come into the moment of connecting Vienna Conference, Beijing, and ICPD. And there was Mabel Bianco, there was Alessandra Nilo. They were connecting the ICPD agenda with the Beijing Platform for Action agenda. And we felt the power, Gina, the power of the collective global movement in putting women's autonomy and voice at the center. Now, I'm in UN Women, back to continue to carry the power of that story. With Maria Noel, with Cecilia, with Bibiana, with Gloria, with the amazing, with Tony, amazing teams. You created a tapestry. It's a tapestry that we carry together. We honor it. We hold the history with the strength and the fragility that it carries. And I want to say thank you so much to the Latin American, Caribbean women and young women whom I met yesterday, who continue to carry that fire. And Mama Luz Haro, who continue to bring the indigenous women, the rural women, the women farmers. Tonight is special. Thank you so much for giving us the energy, the spirit, the creativity. Anna Falou, we'll talk more about this. I just want to acknowledge the last woman from this region that I want to acknowledge. She's not in this room. Is Monica Aleman, who is with Ford Foundation, who is so passionate, who is so much moving this agenda. And I just want whoever knows here to say, we love her. You are a region that is sustaining the conversation, but Gina, the midwives, of the Beijing conference. We celebrate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prendele el micrófono. Prendele.
No, que yo, claro, yo no hice una cosa muy clara en relación
Well, something very clear in terms of ICLAC, and I always do this, and I said that Sonia, the ones who made a negotiation for the forbidden speech was Sonia, and then Miriam Krause also. But anyway, that was great. But ICLAC has also enriched enormously all the feminist movements. I would like to add something. No, all young women, that platform that we had in Latin America and the Caribbean was always one step ahead than Beijing. And that's why we were so strong. Much better than Beijing.
Si me permiten, yo quisiera
If you allow myself, I would like to thank Gina before leaving. Ana Falou, thank you so much for what you have done. I started organizing women since '88 in Pastaza, and Ana Falou knows the place where I'm living. And I told you before that it's very good that we can give Gina a round of applause standing up here now that she's alive, because I have to honor the memory of Aida Leiva. She created the network of in Latin America and the Caribbean, and Sonia Palau also. Sonia Palan, she received me in Quito when I was going out of the Amazonia to do task, because I'm a peasant, and today has been said that Ana Falou knows, and you know also from UN Women, how we have worked. And I said, ask United Nations to ask for the Rural Women's Day. I always have had this dream. I went to the first meeting, the second meeting, and now we have, this is the sixth meeting, and the third meeting, I could say the 270 rural women of 16 countries which were present in Ecuador, Latin American sisters, welcome. I've got this dream, and if you consider this a good dream, please work all together to get a collective proposal. And March 9th, 2012, we finally has this request from the United Nations to declare dedicated rural women for all the years of exclusion. And we have been working, and the OES have recognized this 10 years period for the recognition of rural women and children. 2024, 2034. So thank you so much for all what you have done. I'm honoring the Gina now. I can imagine how did you feel when you were moved out of the room, but we are not defeatable. And I think that young women should take this home historically, because I've heard even in Brasilia, a girl, she's a sport girl, and she said, please don't talk to me about gender, because there is still reluctancy, because we don't know how tough it has been to go along all this process with a lot of effort, a lot of personal sacrifice, and we have lost some people along this way. And thank you, Anna. Thank you, UN Women, because the first leader women was with the support of FEMCO, Mónica Muñoz. After the Fatima Association of Women, we started with the first school, and Sonia Palam was my mentor, and many of the sisters. And since then, women started having participation in the political area. Luz, I would like to stop here because interpreters have to leave, and then we are going to have a cocktail party. This is not going to be so long because the building is going to be closed because we have exceeded time. So I have Anna Westmes. She has been waiting here. Norma also is the last one, and then Anna, and then we're going to talk during the cocktail. Just a couple of comments because each one could add her own personal view. But yes, we have had a dynamics and a positive agenda in Latin America, which was very powerful. And then we have encountered these governments which were not so open to any proposal. So I would like to rescue the role of some feminist sisters, especially the Spanish one, the Spanish socialist sister, which we felt and we received great support from them, and they were with us all the time. And on the other hand, the room that the conference gave us to expand ourselves on the agenda, especially in my case, I was fascinated with the caucus that we have every day about economic justice, and coming from a continent exhausted with the recipes of Washington Consensus, that was a possibility for debate. Very incredible. A round of applause, Norma.
Ana, parece que hay mitos además de las ganas de
Anna, and we have other two sisters here. They would add some reflection from the Caribbean perspective, and then we are going to close. I'm very, very moved after listening these reflections, and I like them so much that this is translated into a book. And dramas, reflections. It's a real honor to be here with many of you, which are part of the history. And I think that we enter into the 90s, not only in Beijing, but Vienna, Cairo, Rio. We didn't have the effective power. We were not part of the groups of power. We didn't have the resources either, although we received some assistance. But what we had was a movement, our body and our voice. And I think that that's the way how we entered to Beijing. I came to Peru in the year 1991 in a very difficult context, and I would like to say that this, I mean, the 90s, to say the 90s, that was wonderful in terms of women's rights, for me wasn't the case. And 91 was cholera in Peru, the popular urban movement with Elena Moyano. She was killed in 1992 in a war-like context with a lot of pain and many losses. And at the same time, with a neoliberal crisis which have exceeded every scheme, and many countries in Central America were looking for peace, were looking for democratic transitions, very difficult transitions in many of these countries. And I came to work there with the Spanish cooperation. And Spain, in that moment, where I was coming from, we work in our own job with our own profession. And at 6 o'clock, we were out going to the street looking for spaces of expressions. And I asked in Peru, where are the feminists? And they said, well, there's some group perhaps this magazine that is called Divas. And what do they do? And then they said in March, where they sing to the life. And then we have Flora Tristana and other colleagues. And in difficult times, they say in difficult times we have to sing to our life, and the sustainability of the movement is something wonderful. Reflections. One, personal things is political, and Gina adds something that is great. I haven't thought about this. And political is something personal, and this is so clear in how she's sharing this concept. And I would like to say that we not only have discussions inside of our respective countries, but also conversation with Julia Tamayo and lawyers who went to Vienna, that they said that the upset need to be politicized, and the ones who were working in health. And well, this is not so clear, but and I think that Flora and each individual has its own way of thinking. But we said, the ones who were coming from the health field, we said that feminism was emancipating, and not only to emancipate the upset, but we have to open the doors to happiness, to life, sexuality, and discovery of our projects. Diverse but not scattered. That was a great contribution, and it has been said here that the presence, interests, and also the need to indigenize the struggles, and how Wairu was unique in this respect. And I think that they were thinking of this. Hopefully in Mexico we can have a tent of diversity, we can have an icon, we can have this wonderful tent and canvas, etc. And I said that the processes also are very long sometimes, and they take time. Democracies, the new and old agendas, and definitely the idea of the right to have rights up until today, that we are putting the importance of life at the core, like the importance of the planet and eco-dependence as well. Other things that you have said also is how the Latin American presence has expanded the connectivity, that this proposal of movement, as Gina said about Mar del Plata, and also I have some difference with Gina, but for me, Mexico 85 was a milestone. I have the opportunity to know the Ambassador Ere Gonzalez from Mexico. We have Istro, CEDAW, UNIFEM, our convention, and that was essential. The importance of the regional conference and partnerships. This space is unique. We are the only regional commission which has a gender divisions, and so the conference exists since, I mean, from the very beginning. And I would like to open this dialogue between the regional and global aspect, and how the global has been taken to the local level. I heard about autonomy, a structural node. They talk about the society of care, and I say, wow, it is really worth being part of this, that far from being bureaucratic, they are very important. I think that to defend multilateralism today, that has no discussion. And we are the history that we inhabit. We inhabit the desire for transformation. And this is what I have to point here, that I think that we could expand on this because and the book is wonderful and we have to read it. I invite you all to read the book and to think about the book and about other publication of UN Women in Colombia, that is a life of intellectual activism in homage to Magdalena Leon and this connectivity between the movements and academia. During the 90s, we have UN Women, Gender Status, and 83 in the case of Mexico and the Colmex. So there was a great interface in terms of what was being discussed in the academia, how this was linked to feminism and different transitions. And the other thing that has been mentioned here, and I think that this the core of the feminist proposal, especially in the South, is the pacifist vocation, this idea that indigenous women have taught us that this is a correlation between body and territories, that we need to defend life, peace, territories, from the cases that we have in the region, and Sepusar, Mayachi in Guatemala, Macrocaso in Colombia. I think that violence, sexual violence, violence against our bodies, and the importance of in a world of genocide, we have to defend peace, defend life, is a must. Hopefully, this reach to the regional women's conference, and we are going to be more connected there with the delegations of the governments. There were a lot of feminists. I remember the Mexican delegation, they have to work with them, and there were a lot of feminists in the United Nations. So I think that we have something to work on, and of course the canvas, justice mechanisms and resources, is a synthesis of what the region deserves and broad demand. So I would like to invite you all again to give Gina a round of applause, to give yourself a round of applause, to the one who have opened the way, the ones who are not here as well, and Magali Pineda, one of the few feminists who was attending all the feminist conferences. And I think that we have movement, and we have pacifism, and we have also the desire to, disturb, to rule. And I hope that Gina is bringing all this spirit here. We love to hear from Gina.
Creo que nos podemos quedar horas.
Well, I think we could talk for hours remembering and discussing these issues. We ask Aisha, Constador, and Terry, who are members of the advisory committee of civil society for women in Latin America and the Caribbean, to share their reflections from the Caribbean. We know that we're running very late, that we have a cocktail party outside, but I want us to listen to them if possible.
And I was not in Beijing with you, but hearing all of your wonderful stories, I wish I had been. Congratulations on the book. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the women that were in Beijing with you. You may know their names from the Caribbean. Hazel Brown, she's no longer with us, unfortunately, but Judy Wedenberg, Grace Talma, she's from Trinidad, Jackie Sharp, Brenda Gopi Singh, they are all Trinidadians, but they were in Beijing, and the stories that they have told us over the years, just really what you're sharing is reflective of what they've shared with us. What I'm coming away with is that Beijing was like a coming of age for feminists in the region, for feminism in general, but feminism in the region, in the Caribbean and the Latin America. It was like a coming of age for the young women who were there. Many, like you said, knew very little going into the process, but you trusted the process and you learned along the way. And you have now captured that in a way that you're able to share it with others along the way. This book hopefully would become something that we all read, but also something that we reference as we continue the work that we're doing, because we're following in footsteps like yours. So I just want to say congratulations again from persons of my generation, her generation, all of the generations, for all of the things that you have done to help to pave the way for us to come after you. Anna, I love you. Thank you so much again for the work that you've done. Roberta Clark is another person I've had the pleasure of working with in Trinidad, and she's phenomenal, and we claim her in Trinidad, even though she's not Trinidadian, but she's one of us, and we're all one of each other, right? We're all together, Latin America and the Caribbean. So thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Y Terry estuvo en la
Terry was the previous generation of the Civil Society Advisory Group of UN Women, and promoted this work with human rights defenders and accompanying ECLAC with regards to the Escazú process. And that, as a result, thanks to you, Terry. So you are also updating us in the implementation of Beijing and its instruments. And Asia Constable, we would like to invite you as well, because we began this reflection in Chile in the Academic Forum on Territories and Care in one of the dinners when we began to prepare the next regional conference. And she provoked us with very good reflections at that time, and we want her to share them with us, those with us now.
Gina, for sharing your experience and your talent with us by writing, chronicling this story, and really helping us to now sit with this information and think about how we continue to carry that mantle forward. I was not in Beijing either. I was maybe at that time learning my timetables somewhere and stressed out about mathematics and what I would do with mathematics as an adult. But I strongly believe that the work that all the women in the Caribbean that I've had the pleasure to sit with and to learn from, the Judy Wedderburns, the Lynette Vassals, the Peggy Antrobuses, who Peggy is someone who I still call, if I get a headache, I call Peggy. Just to get that kind of motherly, matriarchal kind of guidance from a fellow feminist who really has paved the way. And to know that she comes from this school of women, shoulders on which we so gratefully stand, is also heartwarming. I had a conversation with Terry today about growing up, coming into our senses as young women in this space and as activists, and how difficult it can be when you recognize how systems and structures are designed to work against you. And sometimes when you come to that realization, you lose a little bit of your enthusiasm and hope. And the importance then of youthful energy and perpetual hope to help drive us forward. But as I thought about that, I thought it was even more impressive then and heroic that women like Gina, like Anna, who know that the system is rigged in some ways, know that structures are broken, but continue to maintain that hope, are are even more, formidable because you know the limitations, you know the challenges, but you press on. And so what I am taking from your work and from what you have displayed here this afternoon is the importance of continuing to defy those odds, the importance of continuing to, move forward even when you know that the outcome is not necessarily going to be what you want, but maintaining hope even in the face, and then with the knowledge and the experience that you have of defeat, but maintaining that hope with the optimism that you still have the power to create a just and livable society for all of us. So thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ayesha, for conveying this message of hope. And to conclude, let's see, has anybody else asked for the floor? I think we would like to express our gratitude to everyone. Do you want to switch your microphone on, please? Go ahead.
Bueno, no podíamos ir sin también pensar, ¿verdad? Como el proceso de las mujeres indígenas, que ha sido también muy importante. Y el de estar aquí en este año es crucial también para nosotras como mujeres, juventudes indígenas, ya que también en toda la historia siempre se dice que en la historia, las experiencias, eso queda siempre marcada, ¿verdad? Y por eso también de parte de nosotras, desde los colectivos como la etnia, felicitamos igual manera a Gina de haber compartido todo su proceso y cómo también ha habido esa construcción. Y de igual manera, dentro de lo que podríamos decir como mujeres indígenas, también en la década de los 90, que sería el 95, cuando tiene su participación a nivel global como mundialmente, para nosotras fue crucial. ¿Por qué? Porque en esos momentos la mujer indígena se autoinvita para poder también visibilizar su demanda y de poder poner en la mesa también sus aportes como mujer indígena, el sentir, la visión, y yo creo que en estos momentos se le ha dado mucho lo que es el seguimiento, si no, no estaríamos aquí. Yo creo que también ha sido importante de todo ese proceso que se ha tenido, que las que nos han antecedido, ahí tenemos a nuestra coordinadora Tarsila Rivera, y de igual manera que ha sido siempre una mujer, y con otras que han mencionado, Blanca Chancoso, también ha habido otras mujeres, como lo ha referido Mónica, de que han también otras que no están presentes en estos momentos, pero que han abierto esa trocha, han construido para que las juventudes podamos decir en estos momentos está presente la voz de la mujer y las juventudes indígenas. Yo creo que esa plataforma también para nosotras, desde su propia particularidad, desde una visión colectiva también se hace presente. Por eso, de que no somos un mundo aislante, sino que esa alianza entre todas las mujeres a nivel mundial es sumamente importante para nosotras, de seguir tejiendo para un cambio, para esa construcción, porque lo vemos desde la intergeneracional. Así que prácticamente podríamos decir que solamente era enfatizarlo como el caminar y la construcción y el tejido que se ha dado también desde la mujer indígena también se hace presente y que con el pasar de los años también estarán ahí en la voz de la juventud. Eso es lo que yo quería también dejar mención como etnia. Gracias.
Muchas gracias a ti y a toda la delegación y a Legmia por todos los aportes también para estos días, además de todas estas décadas de construcción. Tenemos a todo el equipo de conferencia de la CEPAL, a los intérpretes, al equipo de comunicaciones que se ha quedado afuera de hora. Les pido un aplauso para ellos y que nos vayamos corriendo, porque se han quedado mucho más de lo previsto y con esto pasamos y a la seguridad y a todo el equipo acá atrás en sala también y nos vamos a tomar algo y a correr. Gracias.